What's going on? Bellator 265 preview going down from Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And this card's got a lot of South Dakota flavor on it. Seems like Bellator usually brings in these mega prospects to take on cans. And in this card, at least certainly the prelims, it's not mega prospects, just like the best guys from South Dakota taking on cans. So you're getting huge prices, but at the same time, yeah, a lot of them seem super easy to parlay together. Or at the very least, that's one of the angles that we'll probably take this week. Again, we've got multiple cards. You got a PFL, you got a Bellator, you got a UFC. So you can really just mix and match exactly what you like. But on this card in particular, unlike the PFL, unlike the UFC, there are some big favorites that more or less seem like they're, I don't want to say a surefire lock, but seem pretty good. Anyways, I'm going to start off the prelims on this one instead of the main card because I want to build up from the prelims, build up from these, 7-1, 8-1 favorites. There's not much to say about, and then eventually get to the main event. So we're going to start off with Jeff Nielsen versus Corey Moegenburg. Jeff Nielsen is a minus 450 favorite coming in against Corey Moegenburg. Could be had about plus 320. Completely understand why. We'll start off with Jeff Nielsen. Obviously, he's the big favorite. So looking at his wrestling transcripts, was a 3-time state placer in high school. Finished fourth, finished third his senior year. Didn't win a state title, but all the same, obviously does come from that wrestling background. Ends up going to Augustana University nearby. It's a D2 program, and he does wrestle D2 for 3 years there. But again, it's always limited success, but it's good to know that he's wrestling at least at a decent level. I guess the highest accolades that he'd have was as a freshman. He finished third the USA Junior Fila Greco-Roman Championships. Beyond that, 19-11 his redshirt freshman season. As a sophomore, he goes 17-13. As a junior, he goes 7-12. And as a senior, he goes 13-10. So not exactly great wrestling transcripts. Wasn't exactly a high-level D2 guy. Mostly just a guy that was showing up. But again, at least we know that he does have a wrestling background and, should translate over well to mixed martial arts, correct? So then you look over at his mixed martial arts record, and he's 5-1 as an amateur. Sorry, 6-1 as an amateur. This is his pro debut, so it seems promising enough. But boy, oh boy, you watch those fights, it ain't pretty whatsoever. One thing about Nielsen is when he wrestled in college, he wrestled between 174 pounds and 197 pounds. So that's a big fluctuation between 3 weight classes. So don't know what's that about, but he's fighting this as a middleweight. I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be considered a big middleweight or a small middleweight. But watching some of these amateur fights, I mean, he has that same wrestling advantage over all these, local guys that are 0-0, 0-1, 1-0, same thing as him. And again, it ain't pretty whatsoever. This Jeff Souter fight, he wins a majority decision. Wins the first round, just takes him down. The wrestling, by the way, doesn't look that good. Second round, he takes him down. The wrestling, by the way, doesn't look that good. In the third round, he's gassed. He shoots a botched takedown. This Souter kid gets on top of him and absolutely beats the piss out of him. If there's another 10, 15 seconds, he probably stops him. 2 of the judges gave it 29-28, saying, well, it was 2-1. The other judge gives that third round a 10-8. That's why it's a majority. His very next fight against his Brady Minner, he wins a split decision. Doesn't look good. Hustles up a split. And then the very next fight, he gets caught in a first-round guillotine choke. He does eventually win his last amateur fight against the CJ Hayes. It's only 3 months ago, and it's on the undercard of LFA 108. So, pretty good promotion to be fighting an amateur fight for. I can't find the footage of that fight because LFA only put their main card up on Fight Pass. They just haven't been able to locate it. So, on one hand, seems like it was a better result. Second round finish, gets on top of the guy. But the guy's 2-1. How good was he? How good this guy look? For a guy that has a wrestling base, I don't think he's really all that good of a wrestler. His striking, not very good. His cardio, not all that good. He's suspect to get beat by somebody. It's just they gave him Corey Moegenburg, and that's why he's a minus 450 favorite. So Corey Moegenburg, not that it's an MMA fight, right? Not that he couldn't make some magic happen. It's not like Jeff Nielsen's some super prospect that's just going to blow right through him. But Moegenburg's just got a bunch of piles of issues of his own. So again, as an amateur, he's 3-1, but no big finishes. Mostly a decision guy, goes through the rhythm. Doesn't look all that coordinated, but, big boy, big for a middleweight especially, can fight as high as 205, doesn't look totally out of place. Makes his pro debut against Brendan Allen. Jeez, tough pro debut in hindsight, right? Brendan Allen goes to the UFC. He's kicking some serious ass, but loses that pro debut first round against Brendan Allen. Then look at him up, right? So shortly thereafter, he relocates from Iowa to Pensacola, Florida, ends up being a bouncer in Pensacola, Florida. That's where shit goes wrong, right? In this news article, Wild Greg's bouncer has a warrant out for his arrest for allegedly attacking a man at Wild Greg's on February 11th. Goes on to basically say he told the rest of the party they needed to leave, only find out that he was being dragged out by 2 Greg-bound bouncers. They were beating him up. bloodied. He pepper sprays a crowd of people. He's got 2 alleged assaults from being a bouncer. Where's the one? Ingram sustained a busted lip, sore neck and back, lacerations to his knuckles. He was missing skin from his knuckles, top of his left hand. Anyways, the moral of the story is he beats 2 guys up at a bar on 2 separate occasions. But then furthermore, apparently he's got child endangerment charges, right? So this all spans from 2016 to 2018 with like his plea hearing coming in like early 2019. I won't call him a piece of shit, but it just seems like, not exactly the best positive history for a professional athlete. And that's what actually bugs out the majority of his pro career. So he fought once against Brandon Allen in 2016, relocates to Florida, and now your career should flourish in theory. But no, he gets a majority decision over Devin Adams on an island fight show in Florida, loses to Logan Woods, first round knockout, pulls out of a fight with Impa Kasanganay, good idea, and that's in 2019, early 2019, March. So he hasn't fought in over 2 years. He's had a slew of legal problems. He wasn't all that good to begin with. And now he's coming in here and taking on, a guy that's at least training every day and training full time, has a wrestling background, had a 6-1 amateur record, coming off a win just 3 months ago for LFA. All of that leads to good stuff. Is $450 a big price tag? Well, not really when you consider that Moegenburg's not really supposed to do much, but it's a fight, and Nielsen's not exactly very high level. He also shows, he's never been finished. He just got caught in a guillotine choke one time. But A, maybe you can catch him in a quick choke again, and B, almost got knocked out, man. You watch that Sauer fight, oof. He's getting an absolute beating in there. So, yeah, I will take Jeff Nielsen, but for a guy that's at minus 450, don't be throwing him right at the top ends of the plays, I don't think, because there is still a little room for this guy to screw up. Not to say he can't improve and get better. More experience will be. And again, you look at his early fight career stuff. He is making progress fight to fight. It's just when you hear about, D2 wrestling background, the guy wrestled for 3 times the state finisher 3 times in high school, out of a decent D2 program as well. You give the guy a pass. In this case, it's like it did not translate as far as I was concerned, but maybe he'll pull off some better stuff in his Bellator debut. Bailey Schoenfelder versus Chris Childs. Current odds are Schoenfelder is a minus 750 favorite, Childs a plus 500. Yeah, this is the same shit essentially, right? So this Bailey Schoenfelder, he looks like he's the real deal in a sense. 26 years old, he is from South Dakota, so he's obviously the local guy. The dude won a state championship at 195 pounds his senior year of high school. That same senior year of high school where he wins the state championship in wrestling, he also was like the captain of his football team, recorded 50 tackles, 1 sack, 1 touchdown, ends up getting a full D1 ride over to the University of Minnesota. Mostly played special teams the first couple seasons there, ends up being a starter the last season there. And really, he's 26 years old, but he only just graduated like last year, like not even a year ago. Like he was still finishing up classes during the pandemic. So yeah, we know that he can wrestle. He has that wrestling background. We know that he's a good athlete. To that extent, his cousins, Chad Greenway, played 11 seasons for the Vikings and was a pretty good athlete himself. So athletic family. We know he can wrestle. That's all good stuff. He's only about 230 pounds, which on one hand, he's been taking a guy that has weighed in as high as 280. So it's like, oh, shit, 230. But that's the new model, I think, for heavyweight. I don't think you want to be 265. I think there was a time where it was like, Brock Lesnar, as big as you can get. And these guys will just they'll take you down. They'll hold you down. But what you're seeing is a lot of these 265 guys are just really slow. And so eventually the smaller heavyweights, by smaller, I mean, Stipe's not exactly a big heavyweight. Daniel Cormier wasn't really a heavyweight at all. Francis Ngannou's not considered to be, a huge heavyweight, although he's like, 245? Pretty big to me. But this model of like these smaller guys, they've got a little more gas in the tank. They're a lot more mobile. They're just general, all-around better athletes. So if this kid leaves a promising football career, I was never going to make it to the NFL. Let's not go that far. But, he's obviously a good athlete. He obviously knows how to wrestle. He links up with a very good team nearby. And he makes his professional debut, no amateur experience, on that very same LFA 108 card. A lot of those South Dakota, because it was in South Dakota, right? A lot of those guys are on this card now. He makes his debut. He knocks the guy out in 20 seconds, right? Looks really good doing it. I would say that he's young. He's green. He's had 1 fight, and it's lost for 20 seconds. But it looks like he's going to probably build into a rather decent prospect. He's got, got the athleticism, got the physical gifts, got the winning mentality, got the pedigree. And I think he probably will make a decent enough transition. So who do you transition him against? Because you give him some decent heavyweight, you could stop that momentum dead in its tracks. And I mean, he could be a fraud. Has anybody seen him get punched in the face? No. Remember that Isaiah Hokit fight from it was like 3 months ago in Bellator? Kid had a solid wrestling pedigree, comes in, one punched by a guy that was like 4-8 as an amateur. So shit can happen because we don't really know what his chin's at. We don't know what his attitude's at. The assumption here is that decent. And against Kevin Childs, it should just be a lot better. So Kevin Childs as an amateur was 3-5. Of those 5 losses, he had been finished in 3 of them, including a 4-fight losing streak. But most concerning would probably be knocked out in the second rounds by this Brandon Eubanks, no big deal. Knocked out in the first round against this Kyle Miracle. Again, we'll give him a pass there. Quits on a stool after one single round against Kayshawn Means. That's a bit of an issue, right? The fight's only about 3 years ago, but now you got a guy that was 3-5 as an amateur and is quitting on a stool after a round against a 1-0 opponent. Again, that's not the kind of guy you're looking to back, I don't think. Makes his pro debut. He loses Ryan Delph, knocked out in the first round. And then he says, you know what? Screw it. I don't want to fight MMA anymore. I'm going to do pro boxing. So he goes over to pro boxing, loses a split decision in his debut, apparently comes back to MMA, beats an 0-2 opponent, goes back to boxing, and boxes this Ryan Delph guy. So really, is he a pro boxer, or is he just boxing this dudes that beat him in MMA because, and it's a draw, whatever, they fight to a 4-round draw. It's a shit fight. Again, he does weigh in at 280. For Bellator, he'll have to weigh 265, so he'll cut down a bit. But, outside of a puncher's chance, because again, he's got pro boxing experience, and he's got a ton of amateur fights. He's actually got a lot more fight experience than Schoenfelder. But he's primarily a boxer, not a very good one at that. And so Schoenfelder, because he has a wrestling background, one would have to assume for a young 1-0 fighter, he's not going to go out there and just, I don't know, anything can happen. Is $750 too big of a price tag? Probably, but there's a reason why he's a $750 favorite. The money's poured in on him because people are buying into the narrative, and I can't lie, I'm buying into the narrative myself. So even though Jeff Nielsen don't look all that good, right? That one makes me hesitant, but he's the rightful favorite. Schoenfelder looks like he could be okay. But again, what do you really know about him? One fight in 20 seconds and a football pedigree. Like, don't jump too far in, I would guess. Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Yeah, exactly. That is actually his name, although, of course, not the same guy. Taking on Devin Fisher. We've got Johnson at a minus 450 favorite. The comeback on Devin Fisher, about plus 320. This one actually surprised me. It was a little bit closer just because of Devin Fisher's got an awful record. Like, I'm actually surprised it was only minus 450. Considering you got a bunch of like 7-1, 10-1 in one case, we'll get to it at Logan Storley, a 20-1 favorite. I just kind of thought that there'd be an auto fade on Devin Fisher, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. So Fisher's had not exactly a very good run of sorts. He starts off, well, he's 31-year-old from South Dakota, so he's that nearby guy you're going to bring in, 31, still prime of his career, but he hasn't fought in 4 years. We'll get to that. He starts fighting at 17 as an amateur, right? Turns 17, makes his amateur debut, and is not a good amateur. Ends up going 4-9, ends up going 5-9 as an amateur over a 3-year period, right? So got a lot of fights, but one of these guys that's showing up, he's not really training, he's not really making improvements fight to fight. He's just a willing participant, jump in there, get it on, right? Makes his pro debut, wins, and then drops 3 straight. So again, 5-9 as an amateur. He's now currently rocking a 4-8 professional record. His last 2 losses are actually to Austin Hubbard, who's going to be fighting in the UFC on Saturday, and Deron Wynn, who also fights in the UFC and was a standout, collegiate wrestler. So decent guys in his last 2 losses, but the other 6 losses are, nothing to write home about. Again, willing participant, willing to fight anybody, but not getting the winning result. And to that effect, he fights Austin Hubbard, who's fighting this weekend as a lightweight, and he gets guillotine choked in 2 minutes. And then he lost to Deron Wynn, who fights as a light heavyweight or a middleweight. I guess he tries to make middleweight, but he really can't. And he gets knocked out in a minute 40. Who does Deron Wynn ever knock out? Nobody. But, this guy gets punched one time and dropped minute and 40. So that's his last fight, and then he takes approximately 4 years off. In fact, it's been 4 years and 4 months. So he actually is sitting in South Dakota, hasn't fought in a long time. Still only 31. That's because he made his debut when he was 17. So he's a lot younger than you'd think for the amount of fights that he's had, for the amount of time he's been fighting. But 4-year break. He's got a 4-8 pro record. He was 5-9 as an amateur. There's no money in this sport for him. You're just taking beatings. You're getting a little bit older, and you walk away. Then Bellator comes to town. That's a big show. I watch Bellator free on YouTube. I enjoy it. Still like the sport. Be cool to fight on a Bellator show. What's the base minimum for Bellator fights? It's like 4-4. Probably get my ass kicked, but I'll take that $4,000 show money all day long. So he hops off the couch to fight Archie Colgan, And then they rebook Archie Colgan, and they're just like, oh, fight Dwayne Johnson instead. And he just happens to land into this fight. So honestly, anything could happen. Again, the Isaiah Hokit, the kid that beat him, he had a terrible looking amateur record as well. This Kevin Childs guy in the fight previous to this one, he's got a terrible record as well. These guys can win. It's a fist fight, Kudos to them for getting in there and doing the damn thing. I'm just saying results kind of speak for themselves. These guys haven't had very good results. So Dwayne Johnson, unfortunately, not the Dwayne Johnson that we all wish he was. But he actually doesn't look all that bad, to be honest with you. He's 33 years old. He's a little bit older. He's from Nebraska. Makes his amateur debut. He actually loses his first 2 amateur fights, right? And then goes on an 8-fight winning streak. Starts figuring it out. Again, one of these guys that accrued a bunch of amateur experience. So on the one hand, you can make the argument, oh, geez, his opponent's got a lot of fights. Losing record, but has a lot of fights. This kid had 10 amateur fights himself. Posted up an 8-2 record. Finished of which with an 8-fight winning streak. That's all impressive. Turns pro, wins his first 4 pro fights. Continuation. That would put him on a 12-fight winning streak altogether. Now, he does lose to Austin Jones on a split decision at LFA 48. Close fight, doesn't go his way. Rebounds by dropping unanimous decision against Ramir Wilson. That's not a great look. Then he himself takes about 3 years away. But recently came back, can opponent, wins in 30 seconds flat. It's about 2 months ago. So at least he got his feet wet. All in all, he had a much better amateur career. He's having a much better pro career. As far as the skills translate, it looks like he is the better all-around fighter. But this is low level. And the one thing that I will admit about this fight, as opposed to the prior 2 that we spoke of, is that Jeff Nielsen, because of his wrestling pedigree, and he could, I don't think so, at least I'm not certain of it, he could develop into something. Bailey Schoenfelder looks like he should develop into something. Dwayne Johnson's 33 out of Nebraska, fought 1 time in the last 3 years. It lasted 30 seconds. And Devin Fisher is an awful amateur, awful pro who hasn't fought in 4.5 years and is probably just looking for a quick paycheck. So on either side, it's not super trustworthy, but I would reckon that Dwayne Johnson's the one that was seriously considering fighting and is seriously considering moving his career along, whereas Devin Fisher just seems like, it might just be a hobby at this point. Archie Colgan versus Ben Simmons. I fucked up on this one because I meant to record this last night. Just so tired, man. So tired. Million things going on. We did Duggar Pass last night. So I was like, you know what? I'll just wake up first thing in the morning and record it then. Archie Colgan was a minus 750 favorite, which not good, but like mega lock. And then I woke up this morning, it was minus 1,000. So it ain't going to go down, tell you that. We did miss 250 points on it, which is a pain in the ass, but what can you do? He's the big favorite for a reason. So this Colgan kid, again, he's another one of these. We'll go back to prospects that should look like they're going to be good. Colgan probably is the best looking prospect of the last. Well, we talked about 2 prospects in Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but of those last 3 fights, Colgan looks the real deal. 26-year-old. He wrestled D1 out of the University of Wyoming. He's a state champion his senior year out of Colorado. Went 27-0, I believe, his senior year. Gets a D1 scholarship out of Wyoming, goes over there, and then did pretty good. Again, reading his transcripts, he just missed out on a – I won't even waste your time. Essentially what it came down to is he made the D1 qualifier tournament, and then he's like 1 loss away from All-American status. So even though this guy is not a D1 All-American, people will be like, oh, man, that's shit. He's actually pretty solid. And again, whereas we talked about Nielsen earlier, like he hadn't had a really good collegiate career, and that was at the D2 level. This Colgan kid, he's wrestling for the Pokies. He goes freshman year 22-12, sophomore year 20-10, 9-3 in dual matches, 13-4 against Big 12 competition. Senior year, 5th place finish at the Big 12 championship, awarded the at-large bid to the NCAA champiomships. He's one of 5 Pokies to participate in the national tournament. He goes 9-0 and won the Cowboy and UNC Open. He goes 3rd place finish at the Cliff Keen Invite, which is a decent enough tournament, right? Wrestles around and ends up being 1 loss short. He makes it to the blood round against Stanford's Paul Fox. He would drop a decision to Fox and is just 1 win short of All-American status. Man, what a bummer. This kid can wrestle. And if you look at his transcripts, he's getting better every year, right? He's a state champion in high school as his senior year, and I think he finished 2nd place the year before, wins it as a senior. Nice record as a senior. Gets to a D1 program, builds. Almost gets All-American status. That's pretty dope. Got a chip on his shoulder. My wrestling career ended short. I still want to do it. Transfers over to MMA and looks the part, man. 3-0 as an amateur. All 3 wins first-round knockouts. He's training in Colorado. I believe he's at Elevation Fight Team. 3-0 as an amateur, 3 first-round knockouts. They're like, you know what? Let's turn this kid pro. He takes Andrew Claiborne And I mean, he takes him to the third round. So not a one-trick pony, not a guy that's just going to get tired after first round. He takes him down. He looks pretty good in the fight. Third round, he's on top of him. Nice takedown and just smashes him up with elbows. Gets a third round TKO. Rebounds with that on that same LFA 108 card that everybody else on this card's fought on. And he gets a first round arm triangle choke over a Bellator veteran and Keith Fatan. Not very good, but all the same, right? First round submission. He can knock you out in the first. He can submit you in the first. He can take you in the third and beat you up. He's got a legitimate wrestling background. He seems to be a very athletic guy. He's training at a very popular camp right now. Sky's the limit for him, right? He was initially supposed to take on Devin Fisher, who we just spoke about, and this fight's at welterweight, right? Fisher fights as a middleweight, so like he was down. They rebooked Fisher so they get him CJ Randall. CJ Randall's like, oh shit, I looked up some tape, I don't want it. So CJ Randall bails out, and now you're getting Ben Simmons. So Ben Simmons is coming in on short notice and also has a hell of a task at hand. And again, how he matches up against him, I just don't think all that good. He hasn't fought in 3 years, and that's what happens when you go to South Dakota. See, I have the same problem as a matchmaker in Ontario or Alberta, right? The pool of fighters isn't huge. There's fighters, but it's not huge. So let's say I've got 6 lightweights in the area, and while he's already fought that guy once, these two guys don't have the record to match him, and that guy turns it down. Well, I don't have anybody for him to fight. I would now then have to go bring somebody in. In South Dakota, it's like the pool of fighters. There's some decent fighters. It's just not a huge pool of fighters. So what happens is when someone pulls out at short notice, it's not just like there's readily available some other guy. What you do is you call these guys that did fight in the local area 2 or 3 years ago. Who knows what they're up to? But it's Bellator. Bellator. And I helped out Bellator with the Casino Rama show. Geez, like 2016 at this point. And basically it was Sam Kaplan was the matchmaker at the time. They were coming to the area and they were just like, do you have a list of local guys in the area that have their medicals that would like to fight? And some of these guys, you just send out random messages and they hadn't fought in years. And they were just like, in. Bellator, in. This is years ago. Bellator's a bigger brand now. But if you're never going to make it to the UFC, you're going to sit there and you're going to retire. Oh, I used to be an MMA fighter. Did you fight in the UFC? No. But it's still pretty cool to say you fought for Bellator. Bellator will let almost anybody fight. So they're just jumping at the opportunity. And in his case, I mean, he has the one notable loss is to Ramiz Brahimaj, who, again, you're going to see fight in the UFC on Saturday, but he gets guillotined in 36 seconds. The fight prior against Tyler Ray, an 0-0 debuting fighter in the local area, he gets guillotined in 3 minutes and 19 seconds. So both of his pro losses, first round guillotine, one of which lasted 36 seconds. And he's fought in once in the last 4 years. So what do you think is going to happen? Archie Colgan's going to go out there. He's going to take him down when he wants. He's probably going to snack him up in a guillotine or snatch the neck. And if he doesn't, he's going to establish a top control and just pound him out from there. This kid does seem like he has somewhat of a grappling game. So is it possible that he catches Archie Colgan, who's a young and green fighter, and might get a little over antsy? Sure. But I would reckon on a day-to-day basis, Colgan's grinding in the gym with guys far superior than Ben Simmons, and catching him is going to be, a big fluke. So $750, yeah, was it a big price tag? Sure, but you're putting it on everything. 10-1, you're still putting it on everything. It's just you're not getting as good of a price. Mike Hamel versus Bryce Logan. Official price tag is -200 on Logan. Comeback on Hamel is +160. I'll go for a dog here, right? So, yeah, clearly we're crushing big, chalky favorites at this point. What could possibly go wrong? Bryce Logan is one of these other guys that's local from the area. He did wrestle at Dakota State University, so he's got a wrestling base, local to the area. It's the same narrative a lot of these guys got, but he's actually well experienced. 12-5 pro record, coming off a split decision loss to Georgie Karahani his last time out. Georgie, one of my boys, so solid opposition. He's also the former LFA champion, 155 pounds. That's all good stuff. The reason I'm going to pick against him is, one, he could have slight durability issues in that his pro losses, Tay Edwards knocks him out in 33 seconds. Grant Dawson knocks him out 3:12 into the second. Both Tay Edwards and Grant Dawson both went on to the UFC. Grant Dawson did good for himself. Tay Edwards not so much. But, decent enough competition. It's this loss to DeMarcus Jackson in 2018 on a split. Doesn't look good in the fight. DeMarcus Jackson, pretty limited competition himself. He drops his very next fight to Nate Andrews in a second-round guillotine choke. Nate Andrews, solid-looking record. You fight that guy in CES MMA, you're fucked. You fight that guy, in PFL, you fight that guy in Bellator, he just doesn't seem to be the same fighter anymore. Not exactly a great loss. By the way, that one happened in CES, so I'll give him a pass there. And then his last time out against Georgie. Georgie's a natural featherweight. Georgie's a former World Series of Fighting featherweight champion. Georgie's fought in the large majority of his career at 145 pounds. In fact, he has an 8-9 record in Bellator over 17 fights. And yet Georgie, moving up to 155, still seemed too strong for him. hustled him up. And hustling him up is the problem. Because Georgie's problem is that he tends to fade a little bit as the fights go. But he wants it. He's a grinder. He's willing to die for it. But his body just starts to get more lethargic and he doesn't press the action quite as much. And yet he's able to grind on him. It's ruled a split decision, but it's straight up the right call. Georgie Karakhanyan did win that fight. Logan didn't look all that good. And that's Logan's first fight after capturing the LFA title. But again, when you look at the guys he defeated in his LFA ranks, a split decision win over Kenneth Glenn, an 8-4 opponent. Beats Jonas Flock, who's fighting on the PFL card and not expected to do much, and then beats Jacob Rosales to win the title. So I don't want to discredit his form, but I'm saying he is in fact quite limited. There are ways to defeat him. In Mike Hamel's case, it doesn't look pretty because he's coming off back-to-back losses and is overall 1-3 in his last 4 fights. But the guy comes forward. The guy's willing to mix it up, and the guy will fight anybody. He's out of the MMA lab in Arizona, trains with some of the best guys on the planet. But look at his last 2 fights, right? His last time out, he takes Usman Nurmagomedov. Who wants to fight Usman? Nobody. He's a plus 765 underdog. And I mean, comes at him. Loses, okay, but comes at him. Makes it a fight. A lot of grit, a lot of grittiness, a lot of determination. The fight prior versus Adam Borics, he comes in against Borics as a plus 1,100 underdog. Loses a split. Fucking gave him a sweat. Came at him the entire time. He seemingly got a great chin. I know he does show a knockout record. If you had knockout lost 32 seconds into the first, that fight was in 2017. Since then, it just seems like you hit him and he comes back stronger. He's always pressing the action. He's not the most technical guy going, but to the crowd, it's a lot of he's coming at you. Now, this is a local crowd. This is going to be local judges. If it is a close fight, they might just screw him and give it to the hometown guy. That's fair. But the way Logan's style is predicated on, he wants to wrestle a little bit, but he's not quite strong enough to get the takedowns. There's a little bit of cage control. The striking is, a little bit limited. I think Hamel might just be able to out-hustle him. And for the plus 165 underdog status on him, I'm willing to take a poke there. So whereas we do got the big favorites in the first 4, I'm willing to take an underdog shot into Mike Hamel and see what happens. Moving on, we got Fabio Aguilar, Taylor Johnson. Taylor Johnson is going to be a minus 250 favorite. Comeback on Fabio Aguilar is plus 195. This one should be straightforward, but could be a little bit more dicey than we'd like, only because Taylor Johnson might have a limited gas tank. And with Fabio Aguilar, you might have to beat him over the course of 3 rounds. So Johnson's going to have to slow his pace down. He's going to have to, calm himself and fight a smart game plan. But I think he's capable of doing it. I think the wrestling is just too big of an advantage. Him, similar to a bunch of other guys, standout high school wrestler, ends up wrestling 1 season for the Ducks out in Oregon, University of Oregon. Would have liked to have seen him wrestle longer, but all the same, I mean, it's a solid D1 program. He's out of Oregon, which is a notoriously tough wrestling state. And beyond that, he currently trains at American Top Team Portland with, a very solid cast of characters, right? Most of which are your Ricky Simone types, or, good, solid Austin Vanderfort, solid grinders, get you to the ground, grind. He has that ability to do that. Looking at his career, I mean, he goes 5-0, but in those 5 wins, minute 34, 8 seconds, 36 seconds, minute 36, 243. That's good enough to get him on the Contender Series, but he showed 5 first-round finishes, most of which were ending very, very early. And so against Andre Muniz, he runs in there against Muniz and dumps him. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, shit, you got a 3rd-degree BJJ black belt. You're in his guard. What were you thinking? He gives up his back. Muniz subs in the first round, less than 2 minutes in. It's like not a bad performance from Johnson in that, man, you came at a tough guy. He landed a pretty solid takedown, but it's in hindsight, he's so nervous in there. He just tries to get it done as quick as possible. If he doesn't finish these fights in the first round, what's going to happen to him? His very next fight against Ed Ruth, it's a 59-second finish. And that's huge, man. You knee-barred Ed Ruth in the first round. Like, clearly he's got a good grappling game to go along with this solid wrestling. But he's a very solid built guy, and he needs to relax a little bit in there. And then you saw that loss against Johnny Eblin, right? It goes 15 minutes. It's the first time he goes to a second round. It's the first time he goes to a third round. It's the first time he goes to a decision. He definitely gets tired in there. Eblin all of a sudden starts out wrestling him, controls him for the majority of the fight. Johnson had an okay first round, but it was cool that he was able to persevere through, but you see that his gas tank's not very good. Then, of course, the last fight against Lance Wright, he goes out there and he submits him 3 minutes into the first. What was troubling about that one is that he looked noticeably fatigued. In fact, it was a good timing to finish Lance Wright when he did, because if he gets extended out of that first round, who knows? But on the mic afterwards, he does go out of his way to say it was all about staying calm. just that's what we're working on. Stay calm in there. And even though I was tired, I stayed calm. And the calmness led to eventually getting the back and getting the rear naked choke win. So is he still developing? Yes. Can he get there? Of course. It's not going to happen overnight. And against Fabio Aguilar, the wrestling is going to be the key. But again, he's a fairly durable guy himself. So that calmness, you got to bring it back to the cage. Take him down, establish top control, hold him down. It can be dicey otherwise. He's one of these typical Brazilians. He comes in with a 17-1 record. Like, if that ain't crazy, I don't know what is. Sorry, he's a 17-2 record. He lost his Bellator debut. But it just like most of these guys are unheard of. Who are they? They don't have listed records. You know, he fights them in local Brazilian shows. He could come in with a record of 9-0 and be fighting a guy that's 0-0. He does fight Thawa Rill. That's in 2016. Was a split decision. Rill was 7-6 at the time. Most known for a pair of wins over Hermes Franca. But like he's fighting limited opposition and he's squeaking out split decisions. So there's no step ups for the most part. He does knock out Marcio Alexander Jr. in 2017. Marcio Alexander Jr. was at least on the Ultimate Fighter, went 0-3 in the UFC, but, you know, dropped a split decision to Tim Means at one point, like, is okay. That's a good win. It's like, step it up. Doesn't really step it up. So finally, Bellator signs him. He takes on Khalid Murtazaliyev, Bellator debut. He hadn't fought in about 3 years coming into the debut. So he's essentially cannon fodder for, you know, a scary-looking Russian. He's a plus 250 underdog. He's not expected to do much. But it turns out this Murtazaliyev guy is fraud. Looks like shit in the first round, right? Shit. Khalid grabs the cage, right? The referee's like, yo, man, don't grab the cage. And then it's Fabio Aguilar takes him down, and he grabs the cage a second time and ends up on top. So the ref's like, hold up, pauses the action, takes him, goes to the corner, tells him, brings him to the center of the ring, doesn't take a point. So Aguilar wins the first round. He actually wins the better striking exchanges, and he kind of had that botched takedown, which you got to give him a little bit of credence there. So legitimately wins the first round. Should have been a 10-8 round because of a point deduction. There just was no point deduction. Then in the second and the third, it's like Fabio Aguilar is one of these guys that's defeated so many guys in the regional scene quick. You know, not that he's got a bad gas tank. He's durable. He can go 3 rounds. It's that like his game's not super dynamic after that. And now Murtazaliyev's like, you know what? I'm just going to take you down. And him off his back, non-existent. Just lies there and takes it. He does eventually scramble back up to his feet and then gets taken down again. He loses the second round. He loses the third round. And because there was no point deduction, he ends up losing a unanimous decision, 29-20. Didn't win the first, loses the latter 2. And he lost the latter 2 as soon as Murtazaliyev was like, I'm just gonna take you down. Johnson should do exactly that. The takedowns should be there. He doesn't got great hips. He tends to back up to the cage, presses back up against the cage, and a simple push and pull is going to get his hips off that cage and onto the mat. Once you get him onto the mat, pull him off the cage. And Murtazaliyev did a great job of that. Instead of leaving him up against the cage so he can post, get up to a knee, you know, wall walk his way back up, he just pulls him off and then drags him out. And then Fabio just kind of accepts it after that. So Johnson's a 250 favorite. I've been betting Johnson a fair decent amount lately. Not over Eblin, as you guys all know, Johnny Eblin, my boy. But he's actually got some skill. He's got some legitimacy. Is that he needs to bank up some more rounds. He needs to fight a middling level of competition, and he needs to use that to improve. Aguilar should give him 2 or 3 rounds at the very least. I would see this thing go in the decision, and I would see it testing his mettle, testing his cardio, testing his will to win, testing these new improvements he's making in the gym. But Taylor Johnson still should be the rightful winner. And on a card chock full of big favorites, and then an underdog we're taking, something in that 250 range is going to make a lot of sense for me. Taylor Johnson is that guy. Jordan Lugo versus Keith Lee. Current price, I believe, is Lugo minus 175. Come back on Keith Lee plus 140. Very tempted. I'm probably just going with another underdog shot here. Jordan Lugo, no disrespect to him. 25-year-old prospect out of American Top Team. Looks the part, 6-0. As an amateur, 5-1. It all comes down to level of competition. How big of a favorite are you? In this case, he's a minus 175 favorite. Well, what has he done so far in his pro career, right? He beat John Duma in his Bellator debut. John Duma, okay, not great, more of a grappler, very limited guy at best. But then he drops his split decision to Cortavius Romeus. I wish I could find that fight. At least I haven't at this point. But he wins a split decision over Romeus. And this fight's last year. It's last August. It's 1 year ago. So 1 year ago, he hustles up a split decision, rebounds with a couple wins for Bellator, both of which were by decision. And his last fight against Caspel was somehow ranked in the Bellator rankings, not sure why. Lugo's ranked as well, by the way. And, he looked good against Bell, but it goes all 3 rounds. He doesn't seem like he's got big fight-ending power. He doesn't got some big submission game. It's mostly just they're going to grind. They're going to go the full 15 minutes. So that's my problem taking on Keith Lee, the younger brother of UFC standout Kevin Lee, is that if it's going to decision and it's mostly going to be a grind, why I would rather be sitting there with the plus, 140 price tag or the ticket on Keith Lee. I mean, the guy can do it all. He's only 24 years old. And whereas I watched this guy's pro debut in Quebec, he fought Tony Laramie and definitely lost, probably 29-28 across the board. And I wasn't all that high on him. Like, this is Kevin's brother, and Kevin's the man in the UFC at the time. This kid's young. It's just like, I'm sure you're training with your brother every day, but he looked limited. He also fought his next 2 fights in Quebec. So first 3 fights were actually fought in Canada. Just looks limited. He'd go on a limited run too, ended up signing to Brave, drops a couple split decisions. The thing is, when you're young, 21, 22 years old, and you're grinding every day in Las Vegas in one of the best gyms in the world, your striking coach is Dewey Cooper, one of the best guys in the game. Your brother's Kevin Lee. You can grind with him. You've got just a plethora of good bodies, and you're young, and you see the success your brother's had, and that fuels you and hungers you. It doesn't matter if you have a bad run to start your career. It's how you improve from there, how you get better from there. And I also see a good amount of improvements out of him. So after a bit of a wonky start to his career, he came in, he made his Bellator debut against Sean Bunch. Now, he's a plus 340 underdog in that spot. Sean Bunch is one of the wrestling coaches at the American Kickboxing Academy. He also wrestled as part of the world team. Very, very, very solid D1 wrestler. Sean Bunch is a solid all-around guy, right? He went out there. He stuffed the takedowns. He grinded on him back. He basically more or less retired Bunch. It's a solid win as a plus 340 underdog. So now he gets this Vinicius Zani. And, decent enough fight. Zani's a Brazilian, more of a striker. I didn't think Keith Lee looked great in that fight. But again, you see that he can wrestle. You see that he can grind. He's going these 15 minutes. He's fighting a better level of competition. This is all better. Both better guys than Jordan Lugo's ever fought. Jordan Lugo's fighting Kaz Bell. Kaz Bell. This kid goes out and beats Sean Bunch, a credited wrestler, out of a very good team in which he's one of the coaches. Vinicius Zani, he's a Brazilian banger. He's got skills everywhere. And then he goes the distance with Rofion Stotts. Now, Stotts, more of a decision guy, I'll admit, but Stotts the man. Prove me wrong. Shut me up. Lost with some Bellator money last week. Bellator traditionally good for us. Stotts, he was the man last week. I can't take anything away from him. He fought a brilliant game plan. Again, that's the level of competition that Keith Lee's been mixing it up with professionally, not to mention the guys he works with in the gym. Whereas Jordan Lugo, they're the same age. One's 24, one's 25. They're both 1-7-4, 1-6-0. But the 7-4 to me means more. He fought legit guys. By the way, Tony Laramie is the younger brother of TJ Laramie. That was his debut. It hasn't been easy for him right from the get-go, right all the way through. And now he's fighting a guy who probably is going to be the next title challenger. That was his last fight. So experience level, we got to go with Keith Lee. In terms of the actual game, yeah, he's going to be slower than Lugo. Lugo seems a little more athletic, a little more dynamic, but it's that ability to grind on him, make this a wrestling match, make this dirty where it needs to be. That athleticism, that speed, it'll start to taper off. When it tapers off and this thing's a little closer, that's when you got to impose your will. And I think he should be capable of at least keeping this close, going to decision. It's a dog or pass fight. It's a dog or pass fight. And for that reason, I'll take that underdog shot plus 140 on Keith Lee. Moving on, we've got Marcelo Golm versus Billy Swanson. There is no line currently as the time of this recording. I even tried to wait a little bit longer, just hoping that they would release a line. It's probably going to be Golm 7-1, 8-1, 10-1. Like, he's probably going to be a big favorite, but there's no reason to believe he shouldn't win. Yeah, when he was in the UFC, it wasn't exactly the best run, but I mean, Tim Johnson is, former University of Minnesota D1 wrestler, solid wrestler. Johnson might have actually wrestled D2. Anyways, doesn't matter. Solid wrestler, collegiately, big boy. Arjan Bular wrestled at the Olympics. Solid wrestler, big boy, Kurt 1FC champ. And Sergey Pavlovich is a giant Russian who's definitely on the juice. So his UFC run didn't go accordingly. I think he goes 1-3 overall. But, I'll give him a pass on he actually did fight some legitimate guys. And since he's been released, he's been near flawless. Beats DJ Linderman, first-round knockout. Beats Brandon Herbert, second-round arm triangle choke. Making improvements. He's still young enough, especially as a heavyweight. He's only 28 years old. He's out of American Top Team. I do see this guy making general improvements and getting better along the way. This fight against Kelvin Tiller or Steve Mowry or Linton Vassell, all fights that were booked that all fell through. I think he has a good chance in those fights, right? But they're all tough fights. Now he draws Billy Swanson on ultra short notice. And that's where I think Billy Swanson's just going to have a lot of issues. Swanson does come from a wrestling background. In theory, he should be able to take him down. I believe he had the opportunity to wrestle D2, never followed through with it. It's just the later years. He owns his own gym now. He's basically his own head coach. He doesn't work with any strikers of note. And his record is a win over an 0-0 opponent, 2-5 opponent, 0-1 opponent, 2-6 opponent. Fair. So his best opponent as a pro has either been maybe the 2-5 Terrence Hodge, or maybe it was Cameron Graham, who was 2-6. Very, very low level. Now, he has fought Harry Hunsucker, who's somehow in the UFC. So that's something, but Hunsucker knocked him out in 59 seconds. And as we all know, with Hunsucker, not exactly an elite level UFC heavyweight. So what we're getting at is Billy Swanson's operating at an ultra low level. And he himself doesn't seem like he's got big submissions, big knockouts. It's mostly he could take you down and potentially end up on top of you. But he's not going to have 15-minute cardio to keep that going. He doesn't really have this big puncher's chance. He doesn't really have this big submission chance. He's coming in on short notice. He's his own head coach. He's going to get bopped up. And again, the best guy he's ever beat was 2-6, 2-5 maybe, whereas Marcelo Golm fought legitimate guys in the UFC. Even his run currently, he's still fighting for Tora at MMA in Brazil. He still fought for ex-MMA over here, local show against, it's good roster, decent fighters. Still only 28. Trains an American top team. How can this guy not win this fight? I get it. It's heavyweights. Anything can happen. But something crazy would fucking have to happen for Billy Swanson to win. So again, we don't have a line, but as soon as it opens, hit it. And maybe you're going to get on the soft opener. We always see soft openers. It's like, shit, I wish I got to it quick enough. This one could be that fight. Sometimes things open soft, It's like this guy should be a 6-1 favorite. It opens up at 3-1. And then within 20 minutes, he is 6-1. And then for Bellator, come fight time, he's 11-1. That's how Bellator goes. That's why you want to get the money in as quick as you can, because the lines just continuously go up and up and up. Logan, Storley, Dante, Schiro, another good example. Sorry, what was the opener? The official opener on Logan Storley was minus 400, right? That seems pretty reasonable to me. 4-1. He's got the wrestling background. 11-1. Trains out of Stanford MMA in Florida. Sky's the limit for him. Good-looking kid. Okay, perfect. 4-1. And then it bumps up to the range of between minus 1,800 and I'm seeing here a minus 3,500. So it got steamed. If we did the show on, I don't know when did they get released on Monday or Tuesday this week? You never really know when they're going to get released. And these are soft openers, so they might tell you your max bet on $100. And if you put $100 on it, it would instantly change the line, right? So they're not meant to stay for very long. They're just trying to gauge the market. And the market clearly says, I want Logan Storley. At 4-1, I want Logan Storley too. At 18-1, at 20-1, I don't really want him that much because, yeah, he's not really adding anything to parlays, right? If we bet him in a straight bet, what do we take him by? Decision? Is that the move? We try to take him by decision? And really, I've been looking at this Dante Schiro guy. He not half bad. He could be a bit of a wild card. That kind of worries me in that, it's MMA. Anything can happen. And when you're not getting any return on your value, I put Logan Storley on all my parlays. I'm minus 2,000. What's he at, right? A couple bucks, a couple cents, depending on the size of the parlay. But more than realistically, he adds $20, $30 in value on a big ticket. It's no money, right? There's nothing there. Whereas if he was to get clipped, the risk wasn't quite there. And again, when you look at Dante Schiro, it's easy to just be like, oh, yeah, land with slaughter. One guy's a big favorite. One guy's a big dog. Write him off. But again, as an amateur, he's 6-1. What's more impressive there is first round knockout, second round Kimura, first round knockout, third round knockout, first round guillotine. Loves to finish as an amateur. Turns pro. First round guillotine, first round TKO, first round arm triangle choke, second round TKO, goes to decision, first round knockout. Starts his pro career 6-0. ONE FC signs him. So now he's got to go over to Singapore, takes on Aguilar. He's a decent guy by ONE FC standards, drops a split decision, a huge experience. You had to travel all the way there. Judges probably weren't going to give you a super fair rub. Split decision loss. That's still pretty high level. And then his next fight against this Jesse Rowland, well, it's in Finland. So he goes from Singapore over to Finland, fights another local guy, goes 15 minutes. So durability is not really a question. Both of his pro losses are by decision. And then he rebounds by beating Victor Moreno back in the States, first round guillotine. And then he knocks out Kenny Robertson in the second round. Now, Kenny Robertson's a 9-time UFC veteran. Kenny Robertson's a super durable guy. Went to decision with Rome Carnero. Recently just went 15 minutes against Chris Curtis on the regional scene, ex-MMA, decent regional card. Kenny Robertson's decent, man. He knocks him out in the second round. So what I'm getting at is throughout his amateur career and his pro career, he's a straight-up finisher. And he'll take whatever he can get. He'll knock you out, but he'll snatch up that neck as well. And with Logan Storley, he figures to be shooting takedowns. Shooting takedowns, shooting takedowns. If this kid's in good shape and this kid's ready to go, at plus 18 or he's plus 1,200. At plus 1,200, is it really worth it? You could sprinkle on the dog shirt. I would just rather pass. I don't think Storley's going to add that much to my game. And last but not least, Storley's wins are low level for the most part. My boy EJ Brooks, but Ian Pascu, Romanian striker, AJ Matthews, just a brawler. Joaquin Buckley, doing good in the UFC now, but mostly a brawler. Matt Secor, undersized, definitely not interested at that stage of his career. He's looked really good against those guys. He's effectively cashed tickets at minus 500, minus 675, minus 760. There was no odds on that one. And then his last time out, he loses to Yaroslav Amosov. His wrestling looked dope in that fight. Dope. But his top control, not really all that good. Now, Yaroslav Amosov is the current Bellator champion, and the guy's a gangster. He's got some of the best takedown defense you're going to see in your lifetime. And Logan Storley takes him down at will and just cannot hold the guy down. He just keeps popping back up and starts to fatigue him. And then you see the striking is still a work in progress. He's out of Sanford MMA. Clearly, they're working on it. But at his core, he is a wrestler. And when you hurt a guy, let's say for whatever reason Schiro is able to sting him. He's got power. He's able to sting him, get a desperation shot out of him, and cling to a neck. It's just such widespread odds. If this was minus 400, I'd be telling you Logan Storley is a top ticket guy. He is. At minus 1,800, I just don't think it's worth the risk. And whereas a lot of people are probably writing off Ben Schiro as just being no good, sorry, Dante Schiro. See, I don't even got the guy's name right. That's how much we're writing him off. He's not that bad. He's not that bad. So keep that in mind. JJ Wilson versus Adam Borics. The current line for the co-main event is Borics minus 140, comeback on Wilson plus 115. Yeah, this is going to be a really good fight, actually. Borics, I was in on this kid. He looked to be the real deal. He's another kid out of Sanford MMA. He was like 23 years old. He cracks out of the Bellator scene. He's 9-0. And most notably, he goes 3-0 to start off the organization. Beats this Teodor Nikolov, who is 11-1, and dices him with a flying knee. It was like, oh, shit, flying knee. Makes a highlight reel. You beat an 11-1 Russian with an OV last name. Pretty dope. Beats a tough Brazilian his next time out. Third round rear naked choke. He's got skills. Not only can he strike, flashy dynamic striking, he's got some decent grappling as well. It's the Aaron Pico fight, man. The Aaron Pico fight, he got taken down in the first, but his takedown defense looked vastly improved. His ability to scramble and then get back up, vastly improved. He himself looks much more confident. And I mean, he's 13-0 at the time. He's like 12-0 at the time. So he's a developing young fighter. Pico's the man. And I've been on that since day one. Even though he's been losing, or when he does lose, I still stay on that. Pico's the man. But this kid goes out there and deads him with another flying knee. Like, my God. Highlight reel for years to come. Adam Borics is now the shit. So now Bellator's like, let's promote this kid for real. And they give him to Pat Curran. Pat Curran's a former Bellator champion, a former decorated champion within the organization, a named competitor for Bellator. And he just goes out there and, puts a beating on a former champion. This is solid stuff. He runs his record to a perfect 14-0. Sky's the limit. So they put him in the Bellator Grand Prix, featherweight Grand Prix, take on some of the best guys in the world. He draws Darian Caldwell in the first round. Like, Caldwell's wrestling just a cut above. He takes Borics down. He chokes Borics out in the first round. Super big letdown. It wasn't like, he was minus 105, so it wasn't like he was a big favorite and it was a letdown in that sense. Just a letdown in that he was 14-0. It looked like he was really building. And it's not that he lost to a game competitor and Caldwell, a former champion for the organization. It's, he got buzzed out of there in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So he wasn't competitive at all. His next fight against Mike Hamel, it's just a rebound. It's a soft rebound. He's a minus 1950. He's basically the same size favorite as Logan Storley. And he wins a split. A greasy split. Part of the reason why we have Mike Hamel this week. But, barely beats him. So this is back-to-back fights. The kid hasn't looked good. The next fight against Eric Sanchez, decision, doesn't look all that good. And his last fight against Jeremy Kennedy, he really didn't look all that good. But what I will give him in that fight is that it was mostly grappling heavy. Like, to this point, he seems like a striker. He likes the flying knees, got a nasty right hand. Henry Hoof's high up on this kid. Striking's developing by the minute. But in the last fight against Kennedy, it's mostly spent in the clinch, mostly spent on the ground. Kennedy's a fine grappler, an excellent grappler. Borics seemed like he had that in his back pocket, that he can grapple, is a very adequate grappler. And then that would be the key to beating J.J. Wilson, because J.J. He's long. They're both 5'11", but Wilson's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage coming in with a 74-inch reach. The guy is long, but he's young. He's 24. He's there to get squashed, but he's there to get squashed on the ground. You need to get this guy to the ground. We'll just talk about his last 3 wins, let's say. The Pedro Carvalho fight, second round TKO. You see he's making improvement. Now's the time to beat him because he's probably going to develop and be a decent fighter all around. But it's this Taiwan Claxton fight on a split decision. It's a close fight. It was a very close fight. And there's not a whole lot going on. He gets controlled up against the cage for the most part, does land the better strikes at range, and does attempt submission attempts. So in the first round, he throws up a flying triangle choke. Looks good to the judges. They may have given him the first. In the third round, he's well on his way to losing. And the last 50 seconds does come on, wins the last minute of the round. They give him the round. That's enough for 2 of the judges to give him a split decision. Since then, he's been matched up fairly soft. Pedro Carvalho has fought some good guys, but he himself as a competitor doesn't usually do very well against those good guys. So he's still only 24, He's long, he's gangly. I don't think he's got the greatest game off of his back, and his striking is good, but it's not elite quite yet. He's still refining himself. Whereas you got Borics is training with Gilbert Burns as his grappling coach, He's worked with Kamaru. He's worked with Chandler. He's worked with all the great guys that have walked in that gym, and almost all of them have made improvements to their overall game, and he's still young. When he first came to the Bellator, he's 25, or he's 24, 25. Now he's 28. Now he's refining himself. But it's that last fight with Kennedy where he showed off a much improved grappling game that I think would be the key here. You say Vicente Luque, he's a striker. Vicente Luque is a striker. Then, gets in a little bit of trouble in the striking with Tyron Woodley. I didn't see that one coming, by the way. But he's able to snatch up the neck. He's got that grappling in his back pocket. Now, Michael Chiesa takes you down, tries to choke you out. As soon as he got a bite on that neck, he grabbed it up. And he credits Gilbert Burns. You see how pumped up Burns was on the sideline, slammed it. Yes, we worked on that. We drilled that. They're operating at a different level. And I would say with J.J. Wilson, this team's smart enough to look at the tape and realize, okay, he's got good footwork. He likes to fight rangy from the outside. He's got opportunistic submission attempts, but he's flat on his back a lot of the time. You can control those long limbs by putting a lockdown on. And I think that would be the proper game plan. And I think that Gilbert Burns is going to have this kid ready the exact same way. Drill the positions we know we're going to end up in, thrive in those positions. So I'm going to take a shot on Borics, again, on a card with big favorites and underdogs that we're going to back. A minus 142 really isn't that bad of a price tag. I don't want to completely discredit J.J. Wilson because he's not a bad competitor. But he's not the greatest guy going. Last point, that Taiwan Claxton fight, he won the split decision. He missed weight. He came in at 147.9. So I thought it was a bullshit decision because one guy missed weight, the other guy made weight. It was a close fight. Why not give it to the dude who actually made the weight? All the same, he wins. That's not the big deal. I haven't seen the weigh-ins yet today because I'm recording in the morning. But he's a big guy for the weight class, right? And that will help him early, right? But the later this fight goes, if Boric is able to zap some energy out, he is able to strike with him. It's not like he's going to be a fish out of water standing, but it's that ability to mix in the grappling, I think, is what should put Borics over. So I'll take the shot on the minus 145. And then we get to our main event action, Sergey Kharitonov versus Chaik Kongo. Kharitonov, a minus 135 favorite. Call back on Chaik the Darkness Kongo, plus 110. I'm going to go with the dog shot again here in Chaik Kongo, which, tell me about it. I know, sounds crazy. He's 46 years old. Good God. Luckily for him, he's taking on Sergey Kharitonov, who's 41 years old. Definitely seems like the spring chicken. Actually, Kharitonov just turned 41 yesterday. His birthday's August 18th. Yeah, so what he wants to know. We got a 46-year-old. Man, that sounds awful. Awful premise that we're betting him. This is what it comes down to. MMA is a sport of striking and grappling, right? And if you have a grappling advantage and you can use that grappling advantage, a lot of times you can make it work for you. If this is a striking battle, mind you, Chaik Kongo knows how to strike. He's a fine striker. At least he certainly was at one point in time. He's going to lose to Sergey Kharitonov. Kharitonov is a step slower than he used to be, but he packs a massive punch. And at his advanced age of 41, not as advanced as Kongo, he's in wicked shape. So is Kongo for that matter, but he's gotten just bigger. He's got a big back on him. He's got big arms on him. He's not fat, but he's thick. Kongo's shredded still, but Kharitonov's thick, and it works for him in striking battles. To that extent, Bellator signs him. He beats Roy Nelson, right? Knees to the body. Hard to put away Roy Nelson. Solid win for Kharitonov. The next win against Matt Mitrione. Solid enough win. Knocks out Matt Mitrione. Chinny, sure, but a nice little win over Matt Mitrione. Then he gets Linton Vassell. So when you look at it, Roy Nelson is a striker, right? He's not looking to take guys down. He's not using to look his BJJ black belt. He's looking to wing overhand rights. He's a striker versus striker. Kharitonov still wins those. Matt Mitrione a little bit chinny and is a striker. In fact, worst wrestler I've seen in a very, very long time. So, yeah, this is going to be a striking battle. He's going to be a striking battle over Matt Mitrione. Lyndon Vassell fought at 205. He's a 205. He's moving up to heavyweight, and he ain't a big heavyweight whatsoever. The difference between him and those other guys is that he's not a striker. He's a grappler. And so what happens? He gets his fight to the ground. Kharitonov's got almost no game off his back. He's a turtle, and he's really fucking tired. And once he's tired and turtled up on his back, you can do whatever you want to him. So Linton easily TKOs him. After that, it's like, you know what? I'm going back to Ukraine to fight Russian opposition that they're going to set up for me. So he takes on Fernando Rodriguez, Brazilian striker. They give him a striking match. That's what he wants. Then he takes a pro boxing match against Danny Williams, shot to bits former champion boxer. Boxing match. Fights Ollie Thompson, former strongman, UFC competitor. Striker. Takes another boxing match and wins. He's actually won his last 2 MMA fights, last 2 boxing matches, right? Forced fight winning streak overall in terms of combat sports. It's all striking. So if you believe that Chai Kongo is a striker because you've watched some old grainy footage of him from back in the day, then sure, Kharitonov's probably going to knock him out. Thing is Chai Kongo realized a while ago that like he was getting older, and if he wanted to keep doing this, he wasn't going to be able to have these Pat Barry fights where it's a drag him out, both guys drop each other, fight to the death type battle. What he can do is use his size to wear on guys and make it as boring as possible, but it is effective. And it's actually been extremely effective for him. We laugh at the fact that he's 46, but when he signed to Bellator, the UFC released him. He signed to Bellator, he was 38. He was supposed to be done at 38. And he's gone on an incredible Bellator run, man. I think officially he's like 10-2 for the organization. He's got solid wins over, Peter Graham, my boy, but he beat Alexander Volkov on a decision, Tony Johnson Jr. on a decision, Augusto Sakai, that same Ollie Thompson, Yavi Avela, Tim Johnson, he knocks him out, beats Vitaly Minakov, 21-0, undefeated, former Bellator champion, Combat Sambo world champion, and people were dying to see him in the UFC. Beats him as well. Goes into, the Ryan Bader fight was a no contest, kind of a bullshit eye poke. All the same. And then his last time out, he's 45. He's shot to bits. Tim Johnson's on his way back up. Let's just run the rematch because the first one was a fluke. Even though, it's a rifle split decision win for Tim Johnson, it's a split decision win in a pretty close and competitive fight. And almost all of these fights that I just mentioned all took place in actually, maybe not the Yavi Ayala fight. I think he just cold cocked his ass in the first. Yeah, cold cocks his ass in the first. Beautiful right hand. And the Tim Johnson fight, he intercepted him coming in. Every other fight except for those 2, it's just in the clinch, grind, try to get takedowns. If you can't get the takedown, press him up against the cage, knees to the body. And for a 46-year-old with that much muscle, surprisingly, he paces himself so excellently, he can fight 2 to 3 rounds. He can go a few rounds. So this is a Legends fight. It's only a 3-rounder. It's not a UFC headline that they're going to have to fight for 5. It's only 3. And Chai Kongo's got a mind to P's and Q's in that first round. But once he gets a hold of him, once he's able to press him up against the cage, and once he starts to tire him, one single takedown could do it. If we get one takedown, we know we win the round. But I can see him starting to put on a little bit of pressure and maybe getting like a similar Linton Vassell type TKO because Kharitonov he doesn't have a game off his back at this stage. And he's just too big to explode and get back up to his feet without exerting himself too much. And his cardio just looks suspect. He can still win striking battles. We've acknowledged that 100%. And this is an MMA fight. There is going to be some striking exchanges. He could cold cock him in the first round. We have to acknowledge that. Yeah, but honestly, more times than not, I think Kongo gets the position he likes. Why? Because he always gets the position he likes. And last but not least, the last time that he's been knocked out was Roy Nelson, 2013. Legendary KO. Legendary. But I mean, it was 8 years ago. So is he chinny? Can Chai Kongo not take a punch? I've been knocked down in 8 years. And that's Kharitonov's real big one thing. Like, is he going to beat him up for 3 rounds? Like, I don't know about that. If anything, it's Kongo looking to go 3 rounds. Kharitonov looking to go 1 round. Got to go with my boy Chaik. So, again, the UFC card seems to have a lot of underdogs this week. The PFL card doesn't really have all that many. This one looks like it could be a decent offering all around. Officially, the picks are going to be, let's start at the top here. We're going to go with Kongo, dog number 1. We're going to go Borics. We're going to go with Storley. We're going to go with Golm. We don't have odds on that one. I'm assuming he's going to be big, though. We're going to go with Kevin Lee. He's going to be, sorry, Keith Lee. I keep saying Kevin. Keith Lee is going to be our dog number 2. We're going to go with Taylor Johnson. We're going to go with Hamel. He's going to be dog number 3. And then we got, Colgan, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Schoenfelder, and Nielsen. So I suppose we're going with 3 underdogs on 11 fight Bellator card. Seems pretty reasonable to me. Hopefully we get the bounces that we need. And otherwise, this is actually a pretty interesting enough looking card. If you wanted to just slap some quick parlays together just to see what makes the most sense, you're going to obviously have to put Logan Storley, but man, I don't like it. Actually, you know what? I just explained to you guys why it makes no sense. I'll put it on at the end to see exactly what it adds, but the consensus will be the same shit. Doesn't make any sense. Let's say I go Taylor Johnson. I'm going to go Bailey Schoenfelder. Oh, my God. Imagine top ticketing Jeff Nielsen. Guess we take Jeff Nielsen, Dwayne Johnson, Archie Colgan. That in itself is actually plus 153. So I will drop Nielsen, and I'm still getting plus 107 money on that. And then this simple addition, okay, so I got plus money. I got a 4-5 parlay. I need 4 guys to win. You know what? Why not put Storley? Because he's a lock, so why not put him on? Moves it to plus 119. So on a $100 bet, you'd be making an additional $17. Although I suppose if you're betting big, it adds up. Yeah, I know it. I know a guy, he would just take these boxing favorites. They were like minus 3,000, minus 5,000, minus 10,000. And he'd put these 12-line tickets together for even money. And I'd be like, well, why are you betting this guy? And he's like, he's a 6-0 amateur British champion taking on a guy from Hungary who's 0-4. So like, what do you think is going to happen? So, well, it's a boxing match. Boxing's less of a puncher's chance than MMA. But, it ended up being pretty profitable for him. Like, he made it work for him. Occasionally here and there you'd lose one, sure. But on the long course of it, these big mega favorites added up would do good. Bellator, in MMA in general, you don't get minus 10,000. You don't get minus 5,000. You don't get minus 3,000. The highest end of it is going to be about this minus 2,000 Logan Storley. But if you were to get a bunch of these minus 2,000 Logan Storleys and put them together, does one of them shit in the apple pie? Potentially. But I guess more often than not, it adds something. We can get even money right off the hop there. And then just to give you a really quick, I'll just give you the PRP now from like my mindset. That way, if by the time I tweet it out on tomorrow, on Friday, if you've lost the lines, like hopefully it's not the end of the world. Okay, yeah. So the PRP would consist of Chai Kongo, Borics, Storley, Keith Lee, Taylor Johnson, Bailey Schoenfelder, Jeff Nielsen, Mike Hamel, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and Archie Colgan is plus 6,200, 6,285. Pretty solid. The guys that have the most potential of shitting that pie that we'll pull off right here is we'll pull off Mike Hamel. He's an underdog, obviously, for a reason. We're hoping he hustles him up, but, he's not a lock by any stretch. I'll leave Nielsen on. We'll drop Kevin Lee, again, underdog for a reason. You know what? You're getting a plus 845, and if you drop Borics off, you're still getting a 5-1. So there's money to be made on this Bellator. We just got to make sure we get the right pattern, which I'm confident we'll be able to do so. And then mixed in with some PFL and some UFC. Hopefully, it is a profitable weekend. So those are your Bellator 265 plays from South Dakota. And hopefully, South Dakota judges get it right if these things, in fact, do make it to decision. Till the next time, good luck. Hopefully, we cash some tickets. Make